So yeah, I just wanted to emphasize, especially for future video watchers, that this is version 3. So make sure that you are on the correct course website because there are 3 versions of it. Just wanted to show you right here that there are versions 1, 2, and 3. With the version 3, there's not really a good reason to watch version 2 anymore, but there is still a good reason to watch version 1. Version 1 is going to use create class, which we're not going to use create class at all today. And if this doesn't make sense to you, that's okay, because it's deprecated. It uses Mocha, Chai, and Sign-On for testing, so if you want to see how React testing looks with those particular frameworks, that's a good reason to look at it. Version 1 and version 2 use what's called standard ESLint, and today we're going to be using Airbnb. And then there's just a bunch of other stuff down here. You can look at that at your leisure. So there are links to version 1 and version 2 on here, but again, today we're going to be on version 3. You can always be assured that the one that's at this particular URL, which is also easy to get to at nho.lt/react, will always be the most up-to-date one. And then I'll move the other ones to different links. Really excited that Front-End Masters gives me the time and resources to be able to go and develop these courses. All of this material will live online free forever, and yeah, you can watch the videos on Front-End Masters, which is pretty sweet. So a little more introduction about me. My name's Brian Holt, currently living in San Francisco, but originally from Salt Lake City. Just really, really happy to be here. Previously worked at Netflix and Reddit, and yeah, this is the complete intro to React. So let's talk about the structure of how this particular workshop is going to work. A lot of times when you get into React tutorials, they just kind of throw you straight in the deep end, right? It's like out of the box, you have to set up Webpack and then Babel and then testing frameworks and just all these different tools right out of the box. And a common refrain amongst new developers with React is that it's too complicated. There's too much going on. There's too much magic, and I don't really get it, which is really frustrating to me because it doesn't have to be that way, right? React itself, at least the way that you interact with React, is actually really simple, and then we build all this complexity on top of it to make it easier, right? So I'm going to use 2 terms here, simple and easy, which I'm borrowing from a talk called Simple Made Easy, which I definitely suggest that you go watch. But to kind of define those terms for you, something can be easy and complex, and something can be simple and hard, right? So easy just means that it's really easy to get done, but it can be very complicated. And simple means that it's the thing itself is actually fairly simple. Or in other words, not complex, but it can be really hard to wrap your mind around, right? So my best example of that is Redux, right? A lot of people find Redux to be very simple because there's not much to it, but it's pretty hard. It's a pretty hard library to get your mind around. So anyway, what I want to say is that we're going to start with bare bones React with literally nothing else. We're going to not even include a separate script file. We're going to put it straight into the HTML to show you that it really is a pretty simple library. And then as we're going to keep going, we're going to keep introducing new tools to make our lives easier. But in the process of introducing tools, we make our application more complex, right? So basically what I'm trying to say is I'm going to try and justify the complexity of the tooling to you. And along the way, hopefully you'll be able to understand the tools that we're using as well. So yeah, with React, typically you're not using just React, right? You can. I'm not saying React by itself can build complicated apps, and there's no reason to even introduce a build step. So it can be done. However, it's going to make your life easier if you do have these tools. So by showing you these tools and justifying the complexity, I'm hoping that you'll see why they're there and embrace the complexity for the sake of ease. Furthermore, you don't have to use any of these tools that we're using today. For example, we're going to be using Flow later in the day, maybe tomorrow, probably tomorrow. But you can use TypeScript. That's totally okay. These are all just choices. I've made a bunch of choices for you, and hopefully that you can see where to pull out these tools and put your own in. React is kind of a choose your own adventure, right? It's not necessarily this is the one way to do everything, right? It's not so prescriptive like Meteor, right? Meteor is amazing, but you don't get many choices with Meteor. You get some, but not very many. With React, it's kind of an open field for you to kind of put the different pieces together. But that means you get stuck putting all the pieces together as well. So, cool. So yes, you're going to be able to plug your own pieces in. And I'll be sure along the way to highlight different alternatives that you could definitely use. So today we'll be using things like Node, Webpack, Jest, Enzyme, Yarn, Prettier, ESLint, React Router, Flow. We're going to use the Airbnb config for ESLint. These are all the different kind of technologies we're going to use. If you don't already have Node installed at this point, please make sure that you get that done sooner rather than later. As long as you're above 4, I don't think we're going to be using anything that's more complicated than that. You really could get by on 0.12. I do not recommend it though. I will be on 7.10. And actually, I saw that today 8 is getting released. We will not be using 8. Cool. There's a ton of spelling errors and stuff like this on the repo, so if you see them, feel free to file an issue, open a pull request, angry tweets, all these things work at getting at me, so cool. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing is I'm going to need you to go clone the start branch, which I have a nice little link there for you, which I'm going to do with you as well. Along the way, I'm going to be pushing up branches to this repo. In fact, you can see here, there's a lot of branches. I'll be prefixing everything with v3, but today we're going to go ahead and start with start. So I'm not going to be talking too much how to use Git today. There's plenty of tutorials for that online, but I will show you how to go ahead and clone this Git branch. So I'm going to just come here. I'm going to grab this URL. I'm going to go to my command line, and I'm going to say git clone that. Oh, I need to get the start branch too. So I'm going to say git fetch origin start. Oh, I have to go into the repo first. Okay, and then I'm going to git checkout start. So just to make sure, yep, and I am now on the v3 start branch. Okay, so it should look a little something like this. Just to kind of give you a bit of a tour around. You're going to have an editor config file. This is only if you use editor config, which is a nice plugin for almost every different editor. It's just going to set all of your editor preferences automatically for you for that particular project. So in this particular case, it's going to make sure they have 2 spaces for indents. It's going to be using spaces, not tabs, all these different things. Git ignore, just a bunch of stuff that we should ignore. Let's actually just open this in Sublime. I'm going to be using Sublime today because that's what I know how to use. I have no horse in this particular battle of which editor to use. I just don't care. I actually had an amusing thought today. I was arguing with someone about semicolons this morning, and I have spent more characters typing out arguing about semicolons than I have saved from not writing semicolons, which I found quite ironic. So, okay, let's look at what we have here. So we have a data.json file, which is going to be a bunch of TV shows kind of data. This is what we're going to be building today. It's kind of a video viewing sort of app. So this just has a bunch of like titles, descriptions, that sort of thing. That's what's in data.json. We have a package.json file. I have locked down these dependencies for you. The reason being is that typically you don't want to lock down dependencies like I have here, but when someone tries this workshop in like a year, right? If they don't get the same dependencies, everything's going to break. I cannot tell you how many times I get tweeted about, hey, this is broken, and it's because they're trying a newer version of one of these particular libraries. So anyway, suffice to say, these are all our dependencies, which is crazy, right, when you look at how many dependencies we're bringing in here, but hopefully it'll make sense throughout the day. Then we have this ratings API.js. So previously this used the Open Movie database to pull different metadata for these movie or TV shows down. Unfortunately, that API went private. So I kind of wrote here just like a quick and dirty little API server that you can run for yourself. So this will always work. So that's all this does. It's just a tiny little Express server. And you can just, I'll show you how to run it later. And then lastly, there's a lock file. This is a lock file to lock down all the dependencies. So cool. So that's everything that should be included. Oh, and there's some CSS and images and whatnot. So we'll be using those as well. OK, so going back here, this is literally the notes that I have that I'm going to be reading from while I teach you this workshop. So if you fall behind, or if you want to see something a different way, or see what I'm reading here, it's all available here. And that's actually what I have on this laptop here.